A man at the top of his world, Patrick Lowe, decided to reward himself. He rewarded himself with a lavish trip to Dubai and with a beautiful mistress named Kendra. He booked them two $30,000 first-class tickets on the world's most exclusive new airline, Celestial Airways. It was the perfect betrayal. A perfect escape. He lied to his simple, unassuming wife, Jennifer, telling her it was a business trip. But as he and his mistress boarded the flight, champagne in hand, the lead flight attendant looked past him, smiled and said, "Mrs. Lowe, welcome aboard. The founder's suite is prepared as requested." Patrick turned, and his entire world shattered. His wife was already on the plane, and she wasn't the woman he thought she was. Patrick Lowe loved the feeling of a deal closing. He loved the solid, satisfying thud of a 100-page contract hitting his polished mahogany desk. From his 60th floor office at Apollo Global Management in Manhattan, he could see the entirety of Central Park, a green rectangle of insignificance dwarfed by the steel and glass monuments to wealth. His wealth. He adjusted the cufflink on his bespoke shirt, a small platinum disc. He was a master of the universe, and he had built his empire from nothing. His wife, Jennifer Lowe, was, in his opinion, a testament to his success. He'd found her, as he often told his colleagues over expensive scotch. She had been a waitress at a high-end bistro he frequented a decade ago, a sweet, beautiful girl who was, he felt, destined for mediocrity until he swept in. He had given her everything. A sprawling penthouse overlooking the park, a black Amex card with no limit, and most importantly, the prestigious Lowe name. In return, she managed his life with quiet efficiency. She handled the staff, organized the charity dinners, and was always ready with a supportive, placid smile. She was, he had decided, comfortably dull. She was a beautiful piece of furniture in his magnificent house, and lately he had grown bored of the furniture. That boredom had a name: Kendra Pierce. Kendra was an associate in the marketing department, 26 years old, and hungry. She was everything Jennifer was not: loud, ambitious, and thrillingly transparent in her desires. She didn't just admire Patrick's Patek Philippe watch, she asked how many deals it took to buy it. She wasn't content with a simple dinner, she wanted the world, and she wanted it now. For 3 months, they had been meeting in high-end hotels and dark bars, a clandestine affair that made Patrick feel young, vital, and most of all, powerful. The Dubai deal was the perfect excuse. A major acquisition was in its final stages. It required his presence, or so he told his partners. The real plan was to take Kendra. "It's a last-minute merger, darling," Patrick had said to Jennifer that morning, straightening his tie in their cavernous, sun-drenched bedroom. Jennifer was on her yoga mat, her back to him, breathing deeply. "Oh? That sounds intense," she replied, her voice muffled as she folded into a forward bend. "It will be. Brutal. I'll be gone for at least a week, maybe 10 days. He watched her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. She was still in great shape, he mused, but there was no spark. "Well, you work so hard, Patrick," she said, rising slowly. She turned to him, her face serene, her pale blue eyes clear. "Just be safe. Call me when you land." Of course, of course." He kissed her on the forehead. It felt like kissing a mannequin. He felt a small, sharp pang of guilt, which he immediately extinguished with a surge of self-importance. He deserved this. He worked hard enough for it. His real excitement was in the booking. He wasn't just flying to Dubai, he was flying Celestial Airways. Celestial was the newest, most talked-about airline on the planet. It was less an airline and more a private club for the stratosphere. They operated only a handful of routes from private terminals, and their first class was rumoured to make other international first-class cabins look like regional coach. Getting a ticket was nearly impossible unless you were a Celestial Circle member. Patrick, through a high-level client, had managed to secure a membership. He sat in his office, the door closed, and navigated to the sleek, minimalist website. He booked 2 first-class Starlight suites for the 9:00 p.m. flight from JFK to DXB. The total cost was just over $62,000. He charged it to his personal account, the one Jennifer's accountants didn't review. He forwarded Kendra's confirmation. Her reply was instant, a string of excited emojis. Patrick leaned back in his chair, smiling. He envisioned the look on her face when she saw the suite, the private minibar, the closing doors, the caviar service. They would drink Dom Perignon and join the most exclusive club in the world, 14 hours of uninterrupted decadence. That evening, he packed his Goyard suitcase. Jennifer sat on the edge of their massive bed, watching him. "Is it the Al Jamil merger?" she asked quietly. Patrick paused. "Yes, as a matter of fact." "How did you know?" "I remember you mentioning it last month. You said it was a difficult negotiation." "It is," he said, zipping the bag. "They're tough, but they haven't met me." "No," Jennifer said, a small, unreadable smile on her face. "They certainly haven't." "Well, good luck, Patrick. Knock 'em dead." He kissed her goodbye, the scent of her simple, lavender-scented lotion filling his nose. He walked out of the apartment, the door closing behind him with a heavy, silent click. He felt a sense of relief, of escape. He was leaving his dull, predictable life behind, if only for 10 days. He never once looked back. He never noticed the small, tight smile on Jennifer's face, or the way her eyes, usually so placid, seemed to be calculating, like the deep, cold blue of a winter ocean. He never imagined that his simple wife, the one he'd saved from a life of serving cocktails, was, in that very moment, sending a text message. To S. Martel. Message: "He's on his way. Confirm manifest for CA 0001, seat 1A, and his guest, 1B. We are green." The Celestial Airways terminal at JFK was not a terminal at all. It was an illusion of privacy, hidden behind an unmarked facade, far from the chaos of the main airport. A private curb, a silent doorman, and an entryway that felt more like a 5-star hotel lobby. Patrick had instructed Kendra to meet him inside, to avoid any chance of being seen together. He walked in, his suitcase gliding silently beside him. The air smelled faintly of white tea and leather. There was no check-in counter, only a woman with an earpiece sitting at an antique desk. "Mr. Lowe," she said, not even glancing at a screen. "Welcome. We've been expecting you. Ms. Pierce arrived just a moment ago. She's in the Polaris lounge. We'll take your luggage from here." Patrick nodded, feeling the familiar rush of power. This was service. He was known. He walked through a short, art-filled corridor and into the Polaris lounge. It was vast, but segmented into small, private living rooms. He saw Kendra in a secluded corner, already sipping champagne, her phone out, filming. "Patrick, baby," she squealed, a little too loudly. She jumped up and wrapped her arms around him, pressing a crimson-red kiss to his cheek. "This place is insane. Did you see the bathroom? The toilets are like 20,000. "Lower your voice, Kendra," he said, kissing her but simultaneously scanning the room. It was mostly empty, save for a few quiet, serious-looking people. "This isn't a nightclub. It's about discretion." "Oh, right. Discretion," she said, drawing the word out. She was wearing a tight, white Balmain dress that left little to the imagination. She looked fantastic, but next to the old money quiet of the other passengers, she was a neon sign. I've never seen anything like this," she whispered, her eyes wide. "That woman over there? I'm pretty sure that's the CEO of Netflix, and, oh my God, is that? It doesn't matter who they are, Patrick said, settling into the plush velvet armchair. A server appeared instantly. Mr. Lowe? Champagne? We are pouring the 2008 Dom Perignon Rosé. Of course, Patrick said. Kendra was vibrating with excitement. A rosé? I didn't even know they made that. She took a picture of the bottle, the flash bright in the dim lounge. Patrick winced. So, she purred, leaning in close, her hand tracing the lapel of his Xenia suit. Tell me about this business meeting. Is it super boring? Excruciatingly, Patrick said, playing along. Presentations, spreadsheets. I'd much rather be otherwise occupied. She said, taking a large gulp of her champagne. We have 14 hours, Patrick. We're going to be very occupied. Patrick felt a thrill. This was it. This was the life he deserved. A beautiful, exciting woman who appreciated the things he could give her. Not a wife who was content. Contentment was for the weak. Ambition was for men like him. He thought, for a fleeting second, of Jennifer. She was probably watering her orchids or reading one of her book club novels. The thought was so bland it almost made him laugh. He pictured her quiet, placid face, and then looked at Kendra, who was now pouting seductively for a selfie, the diamond tennis necklace he'd bought her glittering. He had made the right choice. An hour later, the same woman from the front desk approached them. Mr. Lowe, Ms. Pierce, we will be boarding in 5 minutes. You are in suites 1A and 1B. We can escort you now, if you'd like to settle in. Yes, we would, Patrick said, standing and offering his arm to Kendra. They were led down a private, carpeted hallway, completely bypassing any semblance of a gate. At the end was a single door that opened directly onto the jet bridge. Enjoy your flight, Mr. Lowe. We will, he said with a smirk. He and Kendra walked down the ramp. It was the first time he'd ever boarded a plane without seeing another passenger. At the entrance to the massive Airbus A380, 2 flight attendants in immaculate, deep navy uniforms stood waiting. Welcome aboard Celestial Airways, Mr. Lowe, the first attendant, a tall blonde woman with a European accent, said warmly. Her name tag read, Sophie, lead flight supervisor. Welcome, Ms. Pierce, the second attendant said. This way to the first-class cabin. Suites 1A and 1B are to your right, Sophie gestured. Patrick stepped through the doorway, Kendra clinging to his arm, her phone already out. He stepped into the cabin and stopped, genuinely impressed. It was less a cabin and more a series of private rooms. Polished wood, brass fittings, and ambient lighting. His suite, 1A, had a full-sized leather armchair, a separate bench, a massive screen, and a rose in a crystal vase. The adjoining suite, 1B, was identical. A sliding panel between them could be lowered to create one massive room. This is... Kendra was speechless for once. It's acceptable, Patrick said, trying to sound nonchalant. He tossed his briefcase onto the seat and turned to Sophie. We'll have more champagne, immediately. Of course, Mr. Lowe, Sophie said. But she didn't move. She was looking just past his shoulder, her warm smile turning into one of profound, genuine respect. Her posture straightened. Mrs. Lowe, the attendant said, her voice clear and bright. Welcome aboard. It's an honor to have you. The founder's suite is prepared exactly as you requested. Patrick's blood turned to ice. He heard a sound behind him. The crisp, impossibly sharp click-clack of high heels on the cabin floor. A scent, not of lavender, but of Frederick Malle's Portrait of a Lady, a perfume he'd never smelled before, dark and complex. He turned around, slowly. There, standing at the entrance to the first-class cabin, was Jennifer. But it was not Jennifer. Not his Jennifer. His wife, who he had left in yoga pants and a simple t-shirt, was now dressed in a razor-sharp, custom-tailored Tom Ford pantsuit in a deep burgundy. Her hair, usually in a simple ponytail, was blown out in a sleek, powerful style. Her makeup was flawless, and she was wearing a pair of large, intimidating diamond stud earrings he'd never seen before. She was not holding a carry-on. She was holding a slim, black leather portfolio. She looked, he thought in a daze, like a CEO. She looked like she owned the plane. Kendra, next to him, had frozen, her champagne flute halfway to her lips. Her jaw was slack. Jennifer's cool blue eyes swept over Patrick, then landed, with surgical precision, on Kendra. She took in the tight dress, the shocked expression, the hand still clinging to Patrick's arm. Jennifer didn't raise her voice. She didn't gasp. She just tilted her head, a small, polite, and utterly terrifying smile gracing her lips. "Patrick," she said, her voice as smooth as ice. What a surprise. "And Kendra, isn't it? From marketing." She then turned her gaze to Sophie, the lead attendant. "Sophie, lovely to see you again. Is the 5G connection stable? I have a board call with the Al Maktoum group in an hour." "Yes, Mrs. Lowe. We've routed it through the military-grade satellite. You'll have zero latency," Sophie replied. Jennifer nodded, then looked back at her shell-shocked husband. "Well, do try to enjoy the flight. I know I will." She turned and walked past the first-class cabin toward the very front of the aircraft. An attendant, who had been standing by a door Patrick hadn't even noticed, pulled it open. The door was marked with a simple, engraved brass plaque, "The Founder's Suite." Jennifer stepped inside, followed by the attendant. The door closed with a soft, expensive snick. Patrick and Kendra were left standing in the aisle, the sound of the main cabin door closing and the engines beginning to spool up, echoing the sudden, deafening silence between them. The plane began its pushback. The safety video, a beautifully produced piece of cinema, started to play on Patrick's screen. He couldn't hear it. The only sound in his head was the click of that suite door. The Founder's Suite. "Patrick," Kendra whispered, her voice shaking. She had gone pale beneath her spray tan. "What is going on? Who is she? You said she was a housewife." I don't know," Patrick stammered. He sank into his leather seat, his mind racing. This was impossible. This was a nightmare. How was she here? How did she look like that? Who was Mrs. Lowe? The attendant had spoken to her with a deference he, a 62,000 ticket holder, had not received. Sophie, the lead attendant, reappeared, her professional smile firmly in place. "Mr. Lowe, Ms. Pierce, can I get you that champagne before takeoff?" What is that suite?" Patrick demanded, his voice low and tight. "That is the Founder's Suite, sir," Sophie replied, her tone perfectly level. "And who?" "My wife. Mrs. Lowe is one of our most valued clients, sir," Sophie said, her eyes betraying nothing. "Now your champagne?" "No," Patrick snapped. "I want to see her." He stood up. Sophie didn't move, but she somehow blocked his path. "I'm afraid that's impossible, Mr. Lowe. The Founder's Suite is a private residence, and Mrs. Lowe has requested no disturbances whatsoever. Please, take your seat. We are about to take off." There was a steel in her voice that told him this was not a negotiation. Defeated, he slumped back into his chair. The massive A380 roared to life and lifted gracefully into the night sky. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Almost immediately, the panel between his and Kendra's suites slid open. Kendra was standing there, her arms crossed, her face a mask of fury. "You have 10 seconds to explain, Patrick, or I am walking. I don't know where, but I am done." "I told you, I don't know," he hissed, unbuckling. "This is a setup. She must have found out. She must have found out. Found out doesn't get you a private suite at the front of the plane. Found out doesn't get you a custom Tom Ford suit and a flight attendant who looks at you like you're the Queen of England. You lied to me, Patrick. Who is she? She's no one, Patrick insisted, but the word sounded hollow even to him. She was a waitress. Her parents are, I don't know, middle-class nobodies from Ohio. She's been living off my money for 10 years. Really? Kendra said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Because it looked to me like you were the one flying coach. She called me Kendra, from marketing. She knows who I am, Patrick. She knew we'd be here. The realization hit Patrick like a physical blow. This wasn't a coincidence. This was an ambush. Jennifer knew. She had known this morning, when she calmly wished him good luck. She had let him walk right into this. The 14-hour flight stretched before him like a prison sentence. The service began. It was, as promised, flawless. Caviar was served from mother-of-pearl spoons. The scotch was 25-year-old Macallan. But every time an attendant came by, Patrick felt their eyes on him. They knew. He was the fool, the cheating husband in 1A. Kendra, meanwhile, had descended from panic to sullen fury. This entire trip is ruined, she muttered, aggressively stabbing at her caviar. This was supposed to be our trip. Now I have to spend 14 hours hiding from your supervillain wife? What happens when we land? Is she having us arrested? Don't be ridiculous, Patrick said, though his heart hammered at the thought. She has no power in Dubai. Doesn't she? Kendra shot back. She's on a board call with the Al Maktoum Group. You know who that is, right? They own Dubai. We're flying into her territory, you idiot! Patrick's stomach twisted. He grabbed his phone. He had paid for the high-speed Wi-Fi. He sent a text to Jennifer. Jay, I can explain. Delivered. Not read. He sent another. What is this? What are you doing? Delivered. Not read. He tried to call. It went straight to a not available message. She was on the plane's internal network, and she had blocked him. He was trapped. Halfway through the flight, desperate, Patrick got up. He needed answers. He walked to the front of the cabin. A male flight attendant was standing discreetly near the door to the founder's suite. I need to speak to my wife, Patrick said. I'm sorry, sir. Mrs. Lowe is in a meeting and cannot be disturbed, the attendant said politely. A meeting? We're 40,000 feet over the Atlantic. Yes, sir. Her video conference. I don't care. You tell her that her husband is here. The attendant's smile tightened. Sir, I can assure you, Mrs. Lowe is well aware of your presence on this flight. Now, if you'll please return to your seat, I'd be happy to bring you another drink. Patrick looked at the man, then at the sealed door. He was powerless. He, Patrick Lowe, who could move markets with a phone call, couldn't get past a flight attendant. He returned to his seat, consumed by a cold dread. This was when the flashback hit him, not of his own life, but of hers. He tried to piece it together. The strange, small things he'd ignored. The book club meetings that were always conference calls. The charity she ran. Why did it have an office downtown? The frequent spa weekends she took, alone. And then, a memory. So small he'd almost missed it. About 3 months ago, the Cartier bracelet. He'd bought Kendra a Cartier Love bracelet, a $7,000 trinket. He'd been sloppy. He'd left the receipt on his home office desk, tucked into a folder. He'd remembered it the next day, rushing home in a panic. But the receipt was gone. He'd asked Jennifer if she'd seen it. Seen what, darling? She'd asked, not even looking up from her laptop. The housekeeper tidied up in here. Was it important? No, just an expense report. She had nodded. You should be more careful, Patrick. You never know who's watching. At the time, he'd thought she meant the housekeeper. He realized now, with dawning horror, she had meant herself. She hadn't just found the receipt. She had investigated. She had found Kendra. She had tracked their affair. And she had, somehow, built this entire, elaborate, humiliating trap. She knew he was booking the Dubai trip. She knew he'd use Celestial Airways to impress his mistress. He thought he was being a big shot. He was just a rat walking into a cage she had designed. Kendra had fallen into a restless, angry sleep. Patrick just sat there, in the dark, watching the flight map on his screen. The small plane icon crawled agonizingly slowly across the ocean, moving him, second by second, closer to a reckoning he was utterly unprepared for. The sun rose over the Arabian Peninsula, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The 14-hour flight was, at last, crawling to its end. Patrick hadn't slept. He had spent the night stewing in a toxic mix of scotch, dread, and wounded pride. Kendra had woken up an hour ago, her makeup smeared, her glamour gone, replaced by a cold, calculating resentment. "So," she said, sipping an espresso, "what's the plan, master of the universe? When we land, are we just going to check into our hotel and pretend your wife isn't in the same city?" The hotel. Right, Patrick muttered. He had booked them a royal suite at the Burj Al Arab. She won't follow us. She made her point. You really believe that? Kendra scoffed. You really think this is over? This is just the beginning, Patrick. A woman who can pull this, she gestured around the cabin, isn't just making a point. She's declaring war. Before Patrick could respond, the male flight attendant approached his seat. He was holding a single heavy cream-colored envelope, sealed with a wax D. "Mr. Lowe," the attendant said, his voice neutral. "A note from Mrs. Lowe. She will see you now." Kendra sat bolt upright. "Us?" The attendant looked at her as if noticing her for the first time. "No, ma'am, just Mr. Lowe. She was very specific. Please, sir, follow me." This was it. Patrick's heart hammered. He smoothed his suit, which felt rumpled and cheap. He stood up, his legs unsteady, and followed the attendant to the front. The attendant knocked softly on the door to the founder's suite. A voice from within, Jennifer's, called out, "Enter." The attendant opened the door and gestured for Patrick to step inside. Then he pulled the door shut, leaving Patrick alone with his wife. His jaw dropped. This was not a plane seat. It was an apartment. The room was larger than Patrick's entire Manhattan office. It was decorated in soft greys and blues, with original abstract art on the walls. To his left was a full, king-sized bed in a private bedroom area. To his right was a lounge with a sofa and 2 armchairs. And straight ahead, in front of a massive picture window, was a full-sized partner's desk, currently covered in documents and a sleek, silver laptop. Jennifer was sitting at that desk. She had changed. She was now in a cream-colored silk blouse and trousers, looking relaxed, as if she'd just woken up from a full 8 hours of sleep. A half-eaten breakfast of fruit and pastries sat on a tray. "Patrick," she said, not looking up from her laptop. "Sit." She gestured to one of the armchairs. He sat. The silence was deafening, broken only by the click of her keyboard. He was being summoned, like an underling. "Jennifer, what is this?" he finally managed. This plane, your clothes, the Al Maktoum call. What is going on?" Jennifer typed one last sentence, then closed the laptop. She swiveled in her chair to face him. Her expression was not angry. It was not sad. It was bored. It was the look he usually gave her. "I'm working, Patrick," she said simply, "which is more than I can say for you. You're supposed to be on a business trip, aren't you? How's that going?" "Stop it!" he burst out. "Stop playing these games. Who are you?" Jennifer sighed, as if explaining something to a child. "My name," she said slowly, "is Jennifer Davenport Lowe. Or, as of this morning, just Jennifer Davenport." "Davenport?" Patrick's mind went blank. The name was familiar. Yes, Davenport, as in Davenport Logistics, the largest private shipping and aviation conglomerate in the world. Patrick felt the blood drain from his face. Davenport Logistics wasn't just a big company. It was an empire, an old-money behemoth that owned ports, shipping lines, and, as he was now realizing, an airline. Your family." "My father," she said, "is William Davenport. My grandfather founded the company. She steepled her fingers, am the vice chair of the board and the CEO of our new ventures division. Celestial Airways is my pet project. My baby, if you will. I've spent the last 3 years building it from the ground up." Patrick's world tilted. You were a waitress." "I was," she nodded. "I was 22. I had just graduated from Yale, summa cum laude, not that you ever asked. And I was tired of being the Davenport heiress. I wanted to see if anyone could love me, Jennifer, the person. Not the portfolio. I took a gap year. I got a job. I lived in a tiny apartment. And I met you." She leaned forward. "You were so charming, Patrick. So ambitious. You, with your self-made narrative. I fell for it. I really did. I thought, here is a man who can build his own world. He doesn't need mine. So I played along. I let you rescue me. It was a romantic story, wasn't it? The powerful exec and the humble waitress. You lied to me," he stammered. "For 10 years. No, Patrick," she said, her voice hardening. "I omitted. You lied. You lied this morning. You lied last week. You've been lying for 3 months, 6 days, and... Let's see." She glanced at her watch. "About 14 hours. Ever since you bought that tacky Cartier bracelet for your 26-year-old marketing intern. This whole time, you've been running an empire. Yes, from our home office. Those charity luncheons, board meetings, my book club, legal briefings, my spa weekends, site visits to our new terminals in London and Singapore." Patrick stared at her, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. The woman he thought was dull, the woman he dismissed, was infinitely more powerful, more wealthy, and more brilliant than he could ever be. And then, the final, horrifying thought. My career," he whispered. "At Apollo." "Oh, that," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Yes. That big leveraged buyout in 2018? The one that made you partner? Who do you think provided the anonymous equity partnership? That was a sovereign wealth fund. That was me, Patrick, through a blind trust in the Caymans. Your entire career hasn't been yours. It's been shall we say, a spousal allowance. I couldn't have my husband looking like a failure, could I? It's bad for the brand." He felt sick. He wasn't a master of the universe. He was a pet project, as she'd called her airline. He wasn't the king. He was the court jester, and he hadn't even known he was wearing the costume. "So this," he said, gesturing to the plane, to her. "This is what? Revenge? You fly all the way to Dubai just to humiliate me?" "Humiliate you? Patrick, you're not that important," she said with a cold laugh. "This is a business trip. I'm the keynote speaker at the Global Aviation Summit. The call with Sheikh Al Maktoum was to finalize the sale of 10 of our A380s to his private fleet." This, she pointed to the door, is my plane. You are just a passenger. A cheating, lying passenger who, I might add, is currently in violation of several corporate ethics policies. She stood up, tall and commanding. We're beginning our descent into Dubai. I'd like you to go back to your seat now. Jennifer, please, he begged, standing up. He reached for her. I'm sorry. I was a fool. It was a mistake. She means nothing. This can be fixed. We can be fixed. She looked at his hand, then at his face, with an expression of pure, unadulterated pity. Oh, Patrick, she said. You still don't get it, do you? You still think this is about us, Jennifer continued, walking over to a small, built-in closet and retrieving a black Prada travel bag. You still think this is about a marriage. This isn't a domestic dispute, Patrick. This is a corporate restructuring. What does that mean? He asked, his voice trembling. She turned to face him, zipping the bag. It means that our post-nup, the one you signed so eagerly because you thought your assets were the ones being protected, is now in effect. You signed it when you made partner, remember? Your lawyers insisted. He did remember. He'd been so proud. And in that post-nup, which my father's legal team drafted, by the way, there is a very specific morality clause. Clause 12b. It states that any act of infidelity, if proven, forfeits any and all claims to spousal support, shared assets, and, most importantly, any assets derived from familial-funded opportunities, which, as we've just established, is, well, everything. Patrick felt the floor drop out from under him. You can't take everything. I'm not taking anything, Patrick. I'm just keeping what was always mine. The penthouse? It's in the Davenport Family Trust. The cars? They're leased by my company. Even your beloved Apollo partnership. I'm afraid that's about to be dissolved. What? He whispered. You can't cheat on the wife of a major client and the primary equity partner in your biggest fund and expect to keep your job, can you? That's just bad business. I've already spoken to Leon Black. Your termination papers are being drafted as we speak. Gross misconduct and fiduciary negligence. It's a very clean break. She was dismantling his life, piece by piece, with the casual indifference of someone tidying a desk. But the Dubai deal, he stammered, grasping at the last straw. My meeting, the Al Jamil merger, I have to. Oh, that, Jennifer said, and for the first time she smiled. It was a genuinely amused, terrifying smile. There is no Al Jamil merger, Patrick, at least not for you. My competitors at Emirates were trying to buy them out. I, however, wanted their cargo division. So, I had my team leak a rumor to Apollo that Al Jamil was looking for an American partner. You, being the expert in the region, thanks to the connections I gave you, jumped at it. You created the deal? Just to ensure you'd be on a flight to Dubai this exact week. I knew you couldn't resist bringing her. She flicked her eyes toward the door. And I knew you'd be arrogant enough to book my airline. You thought you were giving her the world. You were just handing me the evidence. The flight manifest, the booking records, your adjoining suites. It's all a very neat little package for the divorce court. The prepare for landing sign chimed. The deal, Jennifer said, closed 48 hours ago. With me. Al Jamil's cargo division is now a fully owned subsidiary of Davenport Logistics. She walked to the door and opened it. The male flight attendant was waiting. We're on final approach, Mrs. Davenport. Thank you, Robert, she said. She looked back at Patrick. He was a statue, a hollow man. You should return to your seat. It's the only one you have left. Enjoy your landing, Patrick. He stumbled out of the suite, the door clicking shut behind him. He felt the eyes of the flight attendants on him. He was a ghost. He collapsed back into 1A. Kendra looked at him, her face a mixture of fear and impatience. What? What did she say? Did you fix it? Is she getting off at a different airport? Patrick just stared ahead. He couldn't speak. Patrick, talk to me. What did she say? It's over, he whispered, just as the wheels touched down with a gentle bump on the Dubai runway. The plane taxied, not to the main terminal, but to a private Royal Air terminal. Patrick watched out the window as a fleet of black Mercedes Maybachs pulled up on the tarmac. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Sophie's voice came over the intercom. Welcome to Dubai. We hope you have enjoyed your flight on Celestial Airways. We ask that all passengers in the Starlight Suites remain seated until our guest from the Founders Suite has disembarked. A private jet bridge, covered in a royal purple carpet, connected to the Founders Suite's private door. Patrick watched, horrified, as Jennifer stepped out, looking fresh and rested. A man in a pristine white dishdasher greeted her with a respectful bow and escorted her into the lead Maybach. Her luggage, which had been in her suite, was loaded into a second car. In less than 60 seconds, she was gone. Then, the jet bridge to the main first-class cabin was attached. You may now disembark, Sophie said, her smile returning. Thank you for flying with us. Patrick and Kendra stood up. They were the first to walk off. They stepped into the terminal, not the royal one, but the standard first-class terminal. As they walked toward passport control, Patrick's phone vibrated. It was an email. From Apollo Global Management, Legal. Subject, Notice of Termination. A second one. From Amex Centurion Services. Subject, An important update to your account. A third one. From jennifer.low.legal.office. Subject, You have been served. Attached was a 200-page PDF, divorce papers. Patrick, Kendra said, her voice high and sharp. My bag. Let's go to the hotel. I need a real drink. They cleared customs. A porter, arranged by Celestial, had their bags. They walked out into the humid Dubai night, toward the taxi line. Where's the car? Kendra demanded. You ordered a car, right? Yes, Patrick said, his mind foggy. He saw a man holding a Low sign. He rushed over. Low, that's me. The man looked at his list. I have a car for Mrs. Jennifer Davenport Low. She already left, Patrick said. Yes, sir. She took her car. I have no other reservation for Low. The man bowed and walked away. What? Kendra shrieked. She took the car? She left us here? We'll just get a cab to the Burj, Patrick said, his hands shaking as he tried to pull out his wallet. They got into a cab. Patrick gave the destination. As they pulled up to the magnificent, sail-shaped hotel, the Burj Al Arab, Kendra's mood lifted slightly. Okay, this is better. They walked in. Patrick went to the private check-in desk. Reservation for Low. Patrick Low, the Royal Suite. The clerk typed. He frowned. He typed again. I'm sorry, sir. I have no reservation for a Patrick Low. That's impossible. Check again. I do have a reservation for a Royal Suite, the clerk said brightly. For a Ms. Jennifer Davenport. It was... I see. It was cancelled, sir. About 4 hours ago. By the guest herself. Cancelled. Yes, sir. And the deposit was refunded to her card. Patrick's blood ran cold. He pulled out his black Amex. Fine. I'll just book a new room. Any room. Of course, sir. The clerk took the card. He swiped it. A small red light beeped. He swiped it again. Beep. I'm very sorry, sir, the clerk said, his voice dropping to a discreet whisper. This card has been declined. Declined? Patrick said, too loudly. That's impossible. Run it again." "Sir, I cannot. It is declined." Kendra, who had been watching this entire exchange, took a slow step backward. Her face, which had been angry, then fearful, now settled on comprehension. "It's declined," she stated. "It's a mistake," Patrick hissed, fumbling for another card. A corporate visa. The clerk ran it. Beep. "Declined, sir." A personal MasterCard. Beep. Declined. It was all gone. Jennifer hadn't just cut him off. She had scorched the earth. Kendra stared at him. He was no longer Patrick Lowe, master of the universe. He was just a man, sweaty and panicked, in a hotel lobby with no money. "Kendra," he pleaded. "Baby, this is just a mix-up. I'll sort it out. We just—" Kendra held up a hand. She looked at him, then at the opulent lobby, then back at him. "You lied to me," she whispered, her voice filled with a venom he'd never heard. "You told me she was nothing. You said you were the power. But you're nothing. You're a kept man. And you're not even that anymore." "Kendra, please! Don't touch me!" she shrieked as he reached for her. "You ruined my life. I'm associated with you. I'll probably be fired. You're nothing." She turned on her heel. She grabbed her own small suitcase and stormed out of the lobby, leaving him standing there, alone, under the gaze of the disgusted hotel staff. The humiliation was total. Patrick Lowe, a man who flew on $30,000 airline tickets, spent the next 3 days in a mid-range airport hotel near Dera, paid for with the last few $100s of cash he had in his wallet. He had tried to call his office at Apollo. His keycard access was revoked. His email was disabled. He finally got through to a junior partner who sounded terrified to be speaking to him. "Patrick, I can't talk," the man had whispered. It's a bloodbath. They're auditing your entire portfolio. They're saying you misrepresented your assets, that you defrauded the firm. It's not fraud. It was my wife's money. That's what they said, Patrick. Undisclosed familial conflict of interest. Your career. It's not just over here. It's over everywhere. You're done. The line went dead. He flew back to New York. He had to use a credit card he hadn't touched since college, one Jennifer's accountants didn't know about, to book a one-way economy ticket on a budget airline with 2 layovers. The 22-hour journey in a middle seat was a fitting punishment. When he arrived at his penthouse, the locks were changed. The doorman, who used to greet him by name, looked at him with cold pity. "I'm sorry, Mr. Lowe. I have instructions. You are not permitted on the premises. A box of your personal effects is in storage." He was, quite literally, homeless. Kendra was, as she predicted, fired. The morality clause at Apollo apparently applied to associates as well, especially when they were involved in a scandal that cost the firm a 9-figure partner. She had vanished, her Instagram account suddenly set to private. The divorce was finalized in record time. Jennifer, with her army of lawyers, steamrolled his single, court-appointed attorney. The post-nup was ironclad. He got nothing. No, that wasn't true. He got to keep his clothes, his personal debts, and a 2015 Audi he'd bought before his career took off. He was forced to sell the Audi to cover his legal fees. 6 months passed. Patrick Lowe now lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment in Jersey City, overlooking the parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket. He had, after hundreds of rejections, finally found a job. He was selling mid-level insurance policies at a small regional firm. The irony was bitter. He, who had once traded in billions, was now cold-calling people to talk about $50,000 life insurance riders. His life was a grey, repetitive loop of cheap coffee, polyester suits, and fluorescent lighting. He was invisible, and he was alone. One Tuesday, he was waiting at a newsstand to buy a paper. His eyes were drawn to the magazine rack, and there she was, on the cover of Forbes. It was Jennifer, but not Jennifer. It was Jennifer Davenport. She was standing on the tarmac in front of a sleek, silver Celestial Airways jet. She was wearing a stunning, royal blue dress, her expression confident, powerful, and serene. The headline blared, "The New Queen of the Skies, How Jennifer Davenport Took on the Titans and Built a Billion-Dollar Airline in Secret." He bought the magazine. He sat on a park bench and read it. The article detailed her genius, her revolutionary business model, her uncanny ability to predict market trends. It spoke of her quiet, unassuming nature, which masked a brilliant, tactical mind. It mentioned her father, William, who was quoted as saying, "I've been in this business for 50 years. Jennifer is the sharpest mind I've ever known. I'm just lucky she works for me." The article briefly, clinically, mentioned her recent divorce. Davenport, who recently shed the Lowe name, is famously private. "I just closed a long, unprofitable chapter of my life," she told us. "Now I'm focused on the future, on building something that lasts." The last page of the article was about her new philanthropy. She had just launched the Davenport Foundation for Second Chances, a non-profit dedicated to providing legal aid and career training for women escaping toxic and fraudulent relationships. Patrick threw the magazine into a trash can. He felt a wave of nausea so profound he had to grip the bench. She hadn't just beaten him. She hadn't just erased him. She had used his betrayal as a marketing tool for her new foundation. She had turned his entire existence into a footnote in her spectacular story. He, Patrick Lowe, the master of the universe, was nothing more than the long, unprofitable chapter she had just closed. He had been a bad investment, and Jennifer Davenport always cut her losses. A year later, Patrick was almost unrecognizable. The sharp, arrogant edges had been worn down, replaced by the dull, rounded shoulders of defeat. He was thinner. His expensive haircut was gone, replaced by something functional and cheap. He sat in a diner, a real diner, with cracked vinyl seats and the smell of old grease in the air. It was the kind of place he used to mock. Now, it was the only place he could afford for lunch. He was stirring his watery coffee when the waitress came by. "More coffee, hun?" she asked. Her name tag read Lucy. She was in her 50s, her face lined with a tiredness he was beginning to recognize. "Yes. Thank you, Lucy," he said. She poured. "You look like you've had a rough one." Patrick looked up at her. He saw for the first time the person, not the role, not the waitress he had saved Jennifer from. He saw a woman working a double shift, her feet aching, just trying to get by. A profound, crushing weight of understanding settled on him. This was Jennifer's life, the one he had saved her from. But she hadn't been this. She had been 22, hopeful, and playing a part. This was real, and this was his new reality. He had been so arrogant as to think he had saved anyone. He hadn't. He had simply been a parasite, blind to the fact that his host was a giant. "Yeah," Patrick said, his voice hoarse. "You could say that." "Well, it gets better," Lucy said, giving him a small, kind smile. "Or it doesn't. But the coffee's always here." She walked away to help another table. Patrick looked out the window. A bus roared by, splashing grimy water onto the glass. Across the street, a small TV in a pawn shop window was playing a business news segment. He saw her, Jennifer. She was on a stage, cutting a ribbon. The chyron read, "Celestial Airways opens new trans-Pacific route." She was laughing, surrounded by pilots and executives, all of them looking at her with pure adoration. She looked happy, free. Patrick looked down at his coffee. He thought of the 30 celulares champagne he'd ordered. He thought of Kendra's cheap excitement. He thought of his 60th floor office. And he realized, with a clarity that felt like a physical sickness, that his life hadn't been built on his success. It had been built on a lie he told himself. He had never been the one with the power. He had just been the one with the ego. He picked up his coffee cup. His hand was shaking. He had bought first-class tickets for his mistress, only to find his wife owned the plane. And in the end, she hadn't just taken his money and his job. She had taken his story. The self-made man narrative was gone. The master of the universe was a fraud. All he had left was a cheap cup of coffee and a bill he would spend the rest of his life paying. He drank the bitter coffee, and for the first time, he truly understood its taste. And that's where Patrick's story ends. Not with a bang, but with the quiet, crushing weight of karma. He didn't just lose his wealth, he lost his identity. Jennifer, on the other hand, was finally free to be the powerhouse she always was, no longer hiding her brilliance behind the role of a supportive wife. She built her empire while he was left to reflect on the fact that he was never the main character. He was just the obstacle. What do you think of this story of karma? Do you think Patrick got what he deserved? Have you ever seen someone's arrogance lead to such a spectacular downfall? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This story was a wild one to tell, and if you enjoyed this journey of drama and revenge, please make sure to hit that like button, share this video with someone who loves a good story, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more real-life dramas just like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. The ballroom glittered with the cold, hard light of 1,000 crystals. But for one woman, it was about to become a stage for the most profound humiliation of her life. Aurora Reinhardt, wife of the city's most formidable billionaire, stood in a dress that was her one act of defiance. In moments that defiance would be drowned in crimson wine, deliberately spilled by the man who had promised to cherish her. He wouldn't stop there. Before the eyes of the city's elite, he would take his mistress in his arms and dance, leaving his wife stained, shattered, and alone in the spotlight of his cruelty. The air in the penthouse apartment was as still and sterile as a museum, a space curated for display, not for living. Aurora Reinhardt traced the seam of the gown laid out on her bed. It was a deep sapphire silk, a whisper of a dress that clung and flowed in a way that felt like freedom. It was her choice, a small but significant rebellion in a life dictated by the whims of her husband, Grayson Reinhardt. For 5 years, she had been Mrs. Reinhardt, a title that was supposed to be an honor, but felt more like a job description. She had met Grayson at a university architectural showcase, where her final project, a bold, sustainable community library, had won top honors. He had been a guest speaker, a titan of industry, who had inherited the vast Reinhardt holdings from his father. He'd been utterly captivated, not by her design, but by her. He'd pursued her with a relentless, dazzling charm that had swept her off her feet. He had promised her the world a partnership, a life where her creativity would flourish alongside his business acumen. The reality was a slow, creeping erosion of self. Her dreams of designing revolutionary buildings were gently but firmly shelved. "There's no need for you to work, darling," he would say, his voice a silken trap. "Your job is to be the face of our home, the hostess of my events, the envy of every woman in this city. He had built her a gilded cage, beautiful from the outside but cold and empty within. Tonight was the annual Reinhardt Foundation Gala, the crown jewel of the city's social calendar. It was an event Grayson orchestrated with military precision, a night to project power, influence, and flawless success. And every year, Aurora was his most important accessory. The bedroom door clicked open. Grayson stood there, already immaculate in a custom-tailored tuxedo. His eyes, the color of slate, swept over the sapphire dress on the bed, and a frown line appeared between his perfectly groomed eyebrows. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low and devoid of warmth. "It's my dress for tonight," Aurora replied, trying to keep her own voice steady. "I picked it out last week." "You picked it out, Aurora? We have a stylist for a reason. I approved the silver-sequined gown from Chanel. It's in the master closet." He gestured dismissively toward the other side of the vast suite. "I didn't like it, Grayson. It was harsh. This one feels more like me." He walked closer, picking up a fold of the silk between his thumb and forefinger, as if it were a distasteful object. "More like you. Who is that precisely the unknown student I found, or the wife of Grayson Reinhardt? The Chanel is an investment piece. It says power. This," he let the silk drop, "says trying." The word stung more than a shout would have. It was his preferred weapon, a quiet, condescending dismissal that made her feel small and foolish. "I want to wear this one," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but the words felt heavy with defiance. Grayson stared at her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. Then a slow, cold smile spread across his lips. It was a smile that never reached his eyes, a smile that she had learned to fear. "Fine," he said, the word clipped. "If you're so determined to make your own little statement, who am I to stop you? Just be ready in an hour. Punctuality is paramount." He turned and left without another word, the click of the door echoing in the silence. Aurora let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It was a victory, but a hollow one. She knew Grayson too well. He never simply conceded a point. He would find a way to make her pay for this small act of independence. An hour later, as she descended the sweeping marble staircase of their penthouse, she saw him waiting by the door. His eyes raked over her, from the simple diamond studs in her ears to the hem of the sapphire dress. He said nothing, merely offered his arm. His touch was audible, even through the fabric of his suit. The ride to the gala was silent. Aurora watched the city lights blur past the window of the Rolls-Royce, a glittering tapestry of lives she could only imagine. She felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. Grayson's silence was always more menacing than his anger. As they pulled up to the grand entrance of the museum, where the gala was held, a flurry of flashes erupted from the assembled paparazzi. Grayson's public persona snapped into place. The charming smile appeared, the easy confidence radiated from him. He helped her from the car, his hand warm on her back now, a possessive, performative gesture for the cameras. "Smile, darling," he murmured, his breath close to her ear. "You're a Reinhardt. You have everything you could ever want." As they walked the long red carpet, Aurora put on the mask she had perfected over the years. She smiled until her cheeks ached, her posture perfect, her every move a study in graceful elegance. But beneath the surface she felt a tremor of fear. Tonight was different. The sapphire dress was a declaration, and she knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that Grayson was preparing his response. The gilded cage was about to become an arena, and she was the one who would be thrown to the lions. The grand atrium of the Museum of Modern Art had been transformed into a celestial wonderland. Thousands of fairy lights were strung from the vaulted ceiling, mimicking a star-filled sky. Crystal-laden tables groaned under the weight of floral arrangements and gleaming silverware. The air hummed with the conversations of the city's most powerful people bankers, politicians, tech moguls, and socialites, all orbiting the gravitational center that was Grayson Reinhardt. Grayson moved through the crowd with the predatory grace of a shark, a charming smile fixed on his face while his eyes scanned for opportunities. Aurora was tethered to his side, a silent, beautiful satellite. He would introduce her with a casual, "You've met my wife, Aurora," his tone making it clear that her identity began and ended with him. She would smile, shake hands, and murmur pleasantries, feeling more like a ghost than a person. She noticed Bianca Sterling almost immediately. It was impossible not to. Bianca was a flame in a room of muted elegance poured into a crimson dress that left little to the imagination. She was the daughter of a rival real estate developer, a woman with ambition etched into her sharp, beautiful features. For months, whispers had followed Bianca and Grayson, but he had always dismissed them with a laugh, calling Aurora's suspicions unbecoming paranoia. But the way he looked at Bianca tonight was different. As Bianca glided toward them, her eyes locked on Grayson. A current passed between them that was so palpable, Aurora felt it like a static shock. "Grayson, darling," Bianca purred, completely ignoring Aurora. "The party is a triumph as always." "Bianca." Grayson's voice was warmer, more genuine than it had been with Aurora all evening. "You look incandescent." "I try." Bianca laughed, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. The gesture was a brand, a claim. Aurora stood frozen, invisible. The polite society around them pretended not to notice their gazes sliding away, but she could feel their furtive glances, their silent judgments. She was the sapphire-clad obstacle, the inconvenient wife in the presence of the woman her husband truly desired. Grayson finally turned to Aurora, his smile tightening. "Aurora, you remember Bianca?" "Of course," Aurora said, her voice cool. "It's hard to forget." Bianca's smile was a predatory flash of white teeth. "Likewise. That's a simple dress, Aurora." Very understated. The compliment was laced with poison. Simple. Understated. In this room, those words meant plain, unimportant. Before Aurora could respond, Grayson steered the conversation away, launching into a discussion about a recent acquisition. He kept Bianca's hand on his arm, effectively creating a closed circle that excluded his own wife. Aurora took a step back, the humiliation a hot flush creeping up her neck. She needed to escape, if only for a moment. "Excuse me," she murmured, slipping away from the group. Neither of them seemed to notice her departure. She found a quiet alcove near the terrace, taking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Her hand trembled slightly. She took a deep, calming breath, the cool night air a balm on her heated skin. She watched her husband from a distance. He was laughing with Bianca, his head bent close to hers, his entire body language screaming intimacy and affection. It was a public declaration of his affair, a spectacle designed to wound. After several long minutes, he seemed to remember her existence. His eyes found hers across the room, and he started walking toward her. Bianca remained behind a smug, triumphant look on her face. For a wild, foolish moment, Aurora felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he was coming to apologize. Maybe he'd seen the pain in her eyes. He stopped in front of her, his expression unreadable. He picked up a glass of red wine from a nearby table, a deep blood-red Merlot. "Having a nice time, darling?" he asked, his voice deceptively soft. "It's a wonderful event, Grayson," she said, choosing the safe, neutral response. "Is it? I was worried you were feeling left out, especially in that dress." He swirled the wine in his glass, the dark liquid clinging to the sides. "You wanted to make a statement tonight, didn't you? To be seen as your own person." The malice in his voice was unmistakable now. The knot of dread in her stomach tightened into a cold, hard stone. "I just wanted to feel like myself," she whispered. "Yourself," he scoffed. He took a step closer, his body blocking her from the view of most of the room. "Let me tell you who you are. You are Mrs. Grayson Reinhardt. You exist because I allow you to. Your name, your status, your entire world. It's all a gift from me. And you are a deeply, deeply ungrateful recipient." His movement was sudden, a deliberate, jarring stumble. The entire glass of red wine tilted, and the dark, viscous liquid cascaded down the front of her sapphire dress. It was like a fatal wound, a blossoming crimson stain that spread across the delicate silk, destroying it completely. A collective gasp rippled through the guests nearest to them. "Oh my goodness!" Grayson exclaimed, his voice dripping with false concern. "How clumsy of me. I am so sorry, Aurora. You must have bumped into me." He was blaming her, in front of everyone. The lie was so blatant, so cruel, that it stole the air from her lungs. She looked down at the ruin of her dress, the wine soaking through to her skin, cold and sticky. Then she looked up at his face. There was no apology in his eyes, only a cold, triumphant glint. He had won. He had punished her for her defiance and reasserted his dominance. He pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket and began to dab uselessly at the massive stain, making it worse. "Here, let me help. This is a complete disaster. You're a mess." His words echoed in her head. "You're a mess." He finally stopped sighing dramatically. "Well, that's ruined. You should probably go home and get changed, darling. No need to make a scene." And then came the final devastating blow. He turned his back on her, leaving her standing there, stained and humiliated. He walked directly back to Bianca, who was watching with a wide, victorious smile. He took her hand, raised it to his lips for a theatrical kiss, and then led her onto the dance floor as the orchestra swelled into a romantic waltz. The room spun. All eyes were on Aurora. She saw the pity, the morbid curiosity, the whispered gossip behind elegant hands. Grayson didn't even glance back. He held Bianca close, laughing and whispering in her ear as they twirled under the starlit ceiling. The crimson of Bianca's dress, a perfect, cruel match to the stain on Aurora's. In that moment, something inside Aurora broke. The love she had once felt, the hope she had clung to it all, shattered, leaving behind only the sharp, cutting edges of betrayal. She was not just a wife to him. She was a prop to be used and discarded. He hadn't just spilled wine on her dress. He had tried to spill it on her soul, to stain her very being with shame. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she straightened her spine. She held her head high, ignored the sea of staring faces and walked. She didn't run. She walked with deliberate, measured steps through the heart of the ballroom, past her dancing husband and his mistress, and out into the cold, unforgiving night, leaving the gilded cage behind, for good. The cold night air was a shock after the overheated ballroom. Aurora walked without a destination, her mind a maelstrom of shock and white-hot fury. The city lights blurred through the tears she refused to let fall. She ignored the doorman's concerned call, walking past the line of limousines and town cars, her ruined dress a flag of her public disgrace. She didn't know how long she walked, but eventually the sounds of the city's pulse brought her back to herself. She found herself standing in front of the St. Regis, a bastion of old-world elegance and quiet discretion. On impulse, she pushed through the heavy brass doors and entered the lobby. She bypassed the check-in desk and slipped into the hotel's legendary King Cole bar. The bar was an oasis of calm. Dark wood, soft lighting, and the low murmur of civilized conversation. She found a small, secluded booth in the corner and slid into the leather seat, finally allowing herself to become small to wrap her arms around herself. The massive wine stain on her dress felt like a brand. A waiter approached his expression professionally, neutral though his eyes flickered to the stain. "May I get you something, madam?" "A cognac," she said, her voice hoarse. "Please." When the drink arrived, she held the heavy snifter in her hands, letting the warmth seep into her cold fingers. She didn't drink, just stared into the amber liquid, replaying the scene at the gala over and over. Grayson's cold smile, the deliberate stumble, the triumphant look in Bianca's eyes, the pitying stares of the guests. A brutish act for a brutish man. The voice was deep and resonant, startling her. She looked up to see an elderly gentleman standing by her table. He was impeccably dressed in a tweed jacket, his hair a shock of silver, his face lined with the kind of wisdom and authority that is earned, not inherited. He held a glass of what looked like whiskey. "I beg your pardon," Aurora said, her defenses immediately rising. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the seat opposite her. She gave a hesitant nod, too stunned to refuse. He settled into the booth with a quiet grace. "I was at the gala. I saw what Mr. Reinhardt did. There was nothing accidental about it." Aurora stared at him. I don't know what you're talking about." The man smiled gently, a kind, knowing expression. "My dear, there is no need for pretense here. You are among the walking wounded. I know the look well. My name is Desmond Galloway." The name registered with a jolt. Desmond Galloway was a legend, a recluse. He was a self-made billionaire who had built a global tech empire from nothing before selling it and disappearing from public life decades ago. He was rumored to be a fierce rival of Grayson's father, a man who operated on a completely different ethical plane. "You're the Desmond Galloway, the very one," he said with a wry chuckle. "Older and far less interesting than the papers used to make me out to be. I make a rare exception for the Reinhardt Gala every year. It's a fascinating anthropological study in avarice and ego." He took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes sharp and intelligent, studying her. "I saw you earlier tonight, Mrs. Reinhardt. When you arrived, there was a fire in your eyes, a flicker of defiance. That sapphire dress was no accident either, was it?" Aurora was taken aback by his perception. "No," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "It wasn't." "I thought not." He nodded. "Grayson is his father's son. He sees people not as souls, but as assets on a balance sheet. You, I suspect, were his most prized acquisition. But acquisitions can be divested, especially when they begin to think for themselves." His words cut straight to the heart of the matter, articulating the truth she had been too afraid to admit to herself for years. The tears she had held back finally welled in her eyes. "He did it to break me," she said, the words choked with pain. "To show everyone that I belong to him, that he can damage me and discard me whenever he pleases. And did he succeed? Desmond asked, his gaze steady and intense. The question hung in the air between them. Did he succeed? She felt broken, humiliated, shattered. But as she looked at this stranger, who saw her not as a victim, but as a person, a flicker of the fire he'd mentioned earlier rekindled. It was the same fire that had driven her to design that award-winning library, the same fire that had chosen the sapphire dress. "No," she said the word, gaining strength as she spoke it. "No. He humiliated me. He hurt me. But he did not break me." A slow, genuine smile spread across Desmond Galloway's face. "Good. That is what I had hoped to hear. Because shame, Mrs. Reinhardt, is a useless emotion. But anger can be a magnificent fuel. It can build empires. Or in the right hands, it can tear them down." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "I've been watching Reinhardt Holdings for a long time. Grayson is arrogant and sloppy. He believes he is untouchable. People like that always leave themselves exposed." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have an architect's mind, do you not? You see the world in terms of structure design and integrity. You know that even the most imposing skyscraper can be brought down if you compromise its foundation." Aurora's heart began to beat faster. This was no ordinary conversation. This was something else entirely. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting," Desmond said, his eyes twinkling with a dangerous light, "that you have a unique opportunity. You have an insider's knowledge of the man, and you have a reason to want justice. I have resources and a deep-seated dislike for everything the Reinhardt name represents. It strikes me that we might have a common interest." He placed a simple, elegant business card on the table. It contained only his name and a private phone number. "Go home, Mrs. Reinhardt. Not to his penthouse, but to a place of your own choosing. Take a day. Let the anger settle into resolve. And when you are ready to stop being a victim and start designing your own future and perhaps his downfall, you call me. I have a project in mind that might just interest an architect of your caliber." He stood up, gave her a small, respectful bow, and left the bar as quietly as he had entered. Aurora sat there for a long time. The cognac untouched her gaze, fixed on the small white card. The air in the bar no longer felt oppressive. It felt charged with possibility. The crimson stain on her dress no longer felt like a mark of shame. It was a declaration of war. Desmond Galloway had offered her a lifeline, but it was more than that. He had offered her a blueprint for revenge. The next morning, Aurora woke up on the crisp linen sheets of a suite at the St. Regis, booked under her maiden name, Aurora Cole. The first light of dawn streamed through the window, illuminating the sapphire dress, now dry and stiff, draped over a chair. It was an ugly, painful reminder, but she didn't hide it away. She looked at it as a soldier might look at their battle scars, a testament to what she had survived. The first call she made was not to Desmond Galloway, but to Nina Vance, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. Nina's reputation was legendary. She was known for dismantling the empires of powerful men who mistreated their wives. "Nina, it's Aurora Reinhardt," she said, her voice clear and firm. "I need to hire you. I'm leaving my husband." There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by a low whistle. "Well, well. I've been waiting for this call for 3 years, Aurora. What was the final straw?" He redecorated my dress with a bottle of Merlot in front of 500 people. Aurora said, a touch of dark humor in her tone. Public humiliation. Classy Nina replied dryly. That's not just grounds for divorce. That's a declaration of war. I'm in. My office, 11 a.m. The meeting with Nina was a bracing plunge into a cold, strategic reality. Grayson's attempts to control her began immediately. By the time she left Nina's office, she had received a dozen texts from him, escalating from feigned concern. Are you all right? I was worried sick to outright threats. You cannot walk away from this, Aurora. Don't be a fool. A notification from her bank informed her that their joint accounts had been frozen. He thought he could starve her out, control her with money as he always had. He had underestimated her. He had forgotten she had allies. Her second call was to the number on Desmond Galloway's card. He answered on the first ring. Mr. Galloway, it's Aurora. I was hoping you'd call, Aurora. His voice was warm and encouraging. I trust you slept on it. I did, she confirmed. And I've hired Nina Vance. My assets are already frozen. Predictable, Desmond chuckled. A bully's first move is always to the wallet. Don't worry about that. I'm transferring a starting fund to an account under your name. Consider it a retainer for your services. Now about that project I mentioned. Are you free to meet this afternoon? They met in a discreet private club, the kind of place so exclusive it didn't even have a sign. In a leather-bound room that smelled of old books and ambition, Desmond laid out his proposal. Every year, he began the City Hosts, the prestigious International Architectural Guild Awards. The most coveted prize is the Building of the Year Award. For the last decade, a project funded or designed by Reinhardt Holdings has won. It's a point of extreme pride for Grayson. It validates his belief that he is a visionary, a builder, not just a man who inherited a fortune. Aurora nodded. She knew the awards well. She used to attend them with Grayson, watching him accept accolades for soulless glass and steel monstrosities. This year, Desmond continued leaning forward. I want to sponsor a competing project. A project with soul. A project with a purpose. And I want you to be the lead architect. He unrolled a set of blueprints on the table. They were for a large, dilapidated warehouse in a neglected part of the city. This is the old waterfront textile mill. I own it. I want to transform it into a state-of-the-art community arts center. The Phoenix Center, I thought we could call it. A place for underprivileged artists, musicians, painters, sculptors, to have studios, performance spaces, and galleries. A place of creation and rebirth, funded entirely by my foundation. Aurora's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just a building. It was a dream. It was the kind of project she had fantasized about before her own ambitions had been suffocated. It was meaningful, beautiful, and deeply human. You want me to design this? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. I don't want you to design it, Aurora. I need you to, Desmond said, his gaze intense. This project needs a visionary. It needs someone with passion, someone who understands what it means to be silenced and to fight for a voice. This is your chance to create your masterpiece right in Grayson Reinhardt's backyard. We will build a monument to creativity and resilience, and we will enter it for the Building of the Year award. We will challenge him on his own turf. The brilliance of the plan was staggering. It wasn't just about personal revenge. It was about professional annihilation. To beat Grayson at the one thing he believed he was good at, to steal the prize he saw as his birthright, would be a blow far more devastating than any divorce settlement. "He will fight it," Aurora said, already thinking through the logistics. "He has half the city council in his pocket. Zoning permits construction licenses." "Leave the politics and the financing to me," Desmond said with a wave of his hand. "I've been out of the game for a while, but I still know how to pull the strings. Your only job is to design the most extraordinary building this city has ever seen. Take all the pain, all the anger, all the years of suppressed talent, and pour it into brick and steel and light." A fire ignited in her chest, burning away the last vestiges of fear and doubt. This was her chance. Not just to get back at Grayson, but to get back to herself, to become the woman she was supposed to be before he had tried to erase her. "When do I start?" she asked, her voice ringing with a newfound strength. Desmond Galloway beamed. "You already have, my dear. You already have." As she left the club, the city skyline seemed different. It was no longer a symbol of Grayson's power, but a canvas waiting for her touch. The divorce proceedings would be brutal, the media frenzy intense. Grayson and Bianca would flaunt their relationship, trying to provoke her. But none of it mattered anymore. She wasn't the broken woman in the stained dress. She was Aurora Cole, architect, and she was about to draw the blueprints for Grayson Reinhardt's ruin. The following months were a blur of frenetic energy and focused creation. Aurora moved into a chic, minimalist loft in a different part of the city, a space that was entirely her own. It quickly transformed into a studio with sketches, blueprints, and material samples covering every available surface. She lived and breathed the Phoenix Center, often working late into the night, fueled by coffee and a burning desire to create something magnificent. She assembled a small, brilliant team of young, hungry designers and engineers who were inspired by her vision and by the project's mission. They saw her not as a spurned socialite, but as a leader, an artist of immense talent finally unleashed. For the first time in years, Aurora felt respected. Her ideas valued her intellect, celebrated. The woman who had been silenced for so long was now in command, her voice clear and decisive as she directed the project's every detail. The legal battle with Grayson was, as predicted, a vicious and public affair. His lawyers tried to paint her as an unstable, vindictive woman, while the tabloid media, fueled by strategic leaks from Grayson's camp, ran lurid headlines. Bianca was frequently photographed with Grayson dripping in jewels he had bought her, the pair looking smug and unassailable. Aurora, on Nina Vance's advice, remained completely silent. She refused to engage in the mudslinging. Her response would not be in the newspapers. It would be in the rising structure of the Phoenix Center. Grayson, through his sources, quickly learned about her project. At first, he was dismissive. "She's building some charity case downtown." He sneered at Bianca one evening over dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. "A little vanity project funded by that old fossil Galloway. It's pathetic. She thinks she can compete with the Reinhardt Tower expansion." The Reinhardt Tower expansion was Grayson's entry for the Architectural Awards, a cold, imposing glass skyscraper designed to dominate the skyline and project his corporate power. Bianca, sipping champagne, was less confident. "Don't underestimate her, Grayson. Desperate people are dangerous." "She's not dangerous. She's delusional." He shot back, his arrogance blinding him. "She couldn't even pick out her own dress for a party." "You think she can build a legacy?" But as construction on the Phoenix Center progressed, with astonishing speed, whispers began to circulate in the architectural community. Aurora's design was revolutionary. She wasn't just renovating the old textile mill. She was weaving the building's industrial history into a stunningly modern and organic design. She used reclaimed brick and timber from the original structure, combining it with vast expanses of glass and a soaring atrium filled with natural light. The building was designed to be not just beautiful, but sustainable and deeply connected to the community it served. It was a structure with a soul. Meanwhile, cracks were beginning to appear in Grayson and Bianca's perfect facade. Bianca's demands grew more extravagant. She wanted a bigger ring, a more prominent role in the Reinhardt Foundation, a public commitment he was still hesitant to give while the divorce was pending. His legal fees were astronomical, and the constant media scrutiny was beginning to wear on him. He became more irritable, more controlling. One evening, Bianca brought up the Phoenix Center again. "I saw a rendering of it in Architectural Digest online," she said, scrolling through her phone. "They're calling it the most anticipated project of the year. People are talking about her Grayson. They're calling her a genius." Grayson snatched the phone from her hand. He stared at the image of the building, a structure that was all light, warmth, and innovation. It was everything his cold corporate tower was not. A vein throbbed in his temple. "It's a fluke," he snarled, throwing the phone back at her. "Galloway's money can buy good press, but it can't buy taste. It's a glorified homeless shelter." "It's the front-runner for the Guild Award, according to the article." Bianca pressed her voice sharp. "What if she wins?" "She will not win," he roared, slamming his fist on the table, rattling the fine china. "I am Grayson Reinhardt. I do not lose, especially not to her." The outburst silenced Bianca, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Grayson began to see the Phoenix Center not as a pathetic hobby, but as a genuine threat. He started using his influence to cause problems. Sudden, unexpected inspections at the construction site, delays with material shipments from suppliers with ties to Reinhardt Holdings. But for every obstacle Grayson created, Desmond Galloway was there to clear the path. A failed inspection was overturned by a call to a higher-up. A delayed shipment was replaced by an expedited one from a European supplier Desmond had on retainer. The battle was fought not in the courts or the tabloids, but in the shadows of logistics and influence. Aurora remained above the fray, her focus unwavering. As the final panes of glass were installed and the interior spaces took shape, she walked through the atrium of the Phoenix Center. Sunlight streamed through the skylights, illuminating the warm brick and polished wood. She could already hear the echo of music, imagine the vibrant art that would soon hang on the walls. She had poured all of her pain, her anger, and her hope into this place. It was more than a building. It was her resurrection. She had taken the ugliest moment of her life and transformed it into something beautiful and enduring. Grayson had tried to ruin her with a stain, but she had built a landmark. The gala was a distant memory, a nightmare from another life. The woman who had fled in shame was gone. In her place stood the architect of the Phoenix, ready to watch it rise from the ashes. The night of the International Architectural Guild Awards was exactly 1 year to the day since the gala. The venue was the same, the Museum of Modern Art, but for Aurora Cole, the world had been remade. She arrived not on the arm of a powerful man, but on her own, a woman of substance and acknowledged talent. She stepped out of the town car, not into a barrage of pitying whispers, but into a respectful hush, followed by the excited clicks of cameras. The tabloids had been replaced by reporters from esteemed architectural journals and cultural magazines. Her name, Aurora Cole, was on everyone's lips. Her dress tonight was not a weapon of defiance, but a statement of self. It was a gown of burnished gold, structured and elegant, echoing the lines of her own celebrated design. It radiated confidence, not vulnerability. As she walked the red carpet, she saw Grayson and Bianca arriving behind her. Grayson's face was a thunderous mask of fury. Bianca, clinging to his arm, looked pale and anxious, her crimson dress from the year before, now looking garish and desperate. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. The room was buzzing with talk of the two main contenders for the Building of the Year award, the colossal corporate Reinhardt Tower and the soulful, innovative Phoenix Center. Aurora was immediately surrounded by well-wishers and admirers, fellow architects, critics and artists, who would soon call her building home. She found Desmond Galloway near the podium, looking at her with immense pride. "You have them running scared, my dear," he said, his eyes twinkling. "I haven't seen a Reinhardt look that apoplectic since his father lost a bidding war to me in '98. "This isn't over yet," Desmond Aurora cautioned, though. A smile touched her lips. "Oh, but it is," he replied softly. "Winning the award is just the flourish at the end. You've already won. Look around. You have their respect. You have your name back. And you have created something that will last." The presentations began. Grayson went first. He strode to the stage with his usual arrogance, delivering a slick, polished speech about maximizing vertical real estate and shareholder value. The renderings of the Reinhardt Tower were impressive in their scale, but they were cold, generic, and devoid of humanity. It was a monument to money. Then it was Aurora's turn. A quiet fell over the room as she walked to the podium. She didn't use flashy graphics or corporate jargon. She simply spoke from the heart. A building is more than just a structure. She began, her voice calm and clear, resonating through the large atrium. It is a container for human experience. It is a shelter for our dreams, a stage for our lives, a repository for our memories. It should not dominate a community. It should serve it. It should not intimidate. It should inspire. She spoke about the history of the old textile mill, about the lives of the workers who had once filled its halls. She talked about her vision of transforming a place of forgotten labor into a place of vibrant creation. Behind her, images of the Phoenix Center filled them, the giant screen. Not sterile renderings, but photographs of the finished space filled with light and life. She showed the sun-drenched painters' lofts, the state-of-the-art recording studio, the intimate performance hall with its perfect acoustics, and the grand, welcoming atrium. "We called it the Phoenix Center," she continued, "because it represents the idea that beauty can rise from neglect. That purpose can be found in what was once discarded. That a strong foundation is not about how high you can build, but about how deeply you connect to the ground you stand on." She didn't mention Grayson. She didn't have to. Every word was an indictment of his philosophy, his soulless ambition. Her final slide was a simple, powerful photograph of the building at dusk, its windows glowing with warm light, a beacon of hope in its revitalized neighborhood. "The greatest honor of my career," she concluded, her gaze sweeping across the captivated audience, "has been to create a space not for profit or for ego, but for people. A place with a soul. Thank you." The room erupted. It wasn't just polite applause. It was a thunderous standing ovation. It was a roar of approval for her work, for her vision for her. Aurora looked out across the sea of faces and saw him. Grayson was still seated, his face pale with shock and rage, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists on the table. Bianca sat beside him, looking utterly defeated. In that moment, Aurora knew that Desmond was right. The award didn't matter. She had taken the stage that had been the scene of her greatest humiliation and had commanded it. She had silenced the whispers and replaced them with thunderous applause. She had faced the man who had tried to break her, and had shown him and the entire world what she was capable of building. The unveiling was complete, not just of a building, but of her true self. Whatever came next was merely a formality. The hour that followed Aurora's presentation felt both fleeting and eternal. The air in the grand atrium was thick with anticipation as the judges deliberated. The initial buzz of conversation had quieted to a low, tense hum. Aurora sat at a table with Desmond and her design team, accepting their quiet words of encouragement, but feeling strangely serene. Across the room, Grayson's table was an island of hostile silence. He drank whiskey after whiskey, his glare fixed on the stage, while Bianca nervously shredded a cocktail napkin into a pile of confetti. Finally, the president of the Architectural Guild, an esteemed elderly woman named Helen Dubois, walked to the podium. Every year, this award recognizes a project that not only excels in design and innovation, but also contributes profoundly to the fabric of our city. She began, her voice echoing through the silent hall. This year, the choice was both incredibly difficult and in the end remarkably clear. We had two titans of architecture in contention, one representing the power of the corporate skyline, the other the heart of the community. Grayson sat up straighter, a flicker of his old arrogance returning. He had won for 10 years straight. He couldn't conceive of a world where that would change. While the technical achievement of the Reinhardt Tower expansion is undeniable, Helen continued, true architecture must be measured by its impact on human lives. It is for its breathtaking beauty, its innovative use of historic space, and its profound commitment to the soul of our city that the judges have made a unanimous decision. She paused, opening the golden envelope. The entire room held its breath. The Building of the Year award goes to the Phoenix Center, designed by Aurora Cole. For a moment, there was absolute silence, followed by an explosion of applause that shook the very foundations of the museum. Aurora's team erupted in joyous shouts, hugging her and each other. Desmond gripped her shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. Aurora felt a wave of emotion so powerful it almost buckled her knees, gratitude, vindication, and a deep, resounding joy. She made her way to the stage in a daze, the heavy, beautiful award feeling surreal in her hands. She gave a short, heartfelt speech, thanking Desmond, her team, and the community that had embraced the project. As she spoke, her eyes found Grayson. He looked as though he had been struck by lightning. The blood had drained from his face, leaving it a ghastly white. He was staring at her, his expression a toxic cocktail of disbelief, hatred, and utter defeat. As Aurora returned to her table, a hero's welcome awaiting her, a commotion started near the entrance of the ballroom. A small group of people in dark conservative suits had entered, led by a man with a grim, determined expression. They were not guests. They moved with an unnerving purpose, making a direct line for Grayson Reinhardt's table. Two of them flanked Grayson, speaking to him in low, urgent tones. One of them slid a document across the table in front of him. A journalist near the scene, sensing a major story, raised his phone to start recording. Grayson Reinhardt, the lead agent, said, his voice loud enough to carry in the sudden quiet. "I'm Agent Miller with the SEC. We have a warrant for your arrest on multiple counts of securities fraud and embezzlement." A collective gasp went through the room. Grayson shot to his feet, his face contorted in a mask of fury. This is ridiculous. It's a mistake. You have no idea who I am. Oh, we have a very clear idea, Mr. Reinhardt, Agent Miller said calmly. We've been investigating your company's finances for the past 6 months, thanks to a very detailed and credible tip from a source who has been aware of your father's creative accounting for years. It seems you carried on the family tradition. Grayson's eyes darted around the room, finally landing on Desmond Galloway, who gave him a small, polite nod. The realization dawned on Grayson's face this was no coincidence. The project, the award, the arrest, it was all a coordinated attack. Bianca, seeing her entire future dissolving before her eyes, made her choice. She stood up, snatched her purse, and took a deliberate step away from Grayson. "I have nothing to do with this," she announced to the room at large, her voice shrill with panic. "I had no idea. I am as much a victim as anyone." She turned and all but ran from the ballroom, abandoning him without a second glance. The final betrayal seemed to shatter what little composure Grayson had left. "You," he roared, pointing a trembling finger at Aurora. "This is you. You did this." Before he could lunge toward her, the agents had his arms pinned behind his back, clicking handcuffs into place. The sound was sharp and final in the stunned silence of the room. As they led him away, a disgraced, sputtering shell of the powerful man he had once been. His eyes met Aurora's one last time. In them, she saw no remorse, no understanding, only the impotent rage of a king whose castle had crumbled to dust around him. Aurora felt nothing. No hatred, no pity, not even satisfaction. He was simply irrelevant. A ghost from a past she had already left behind. She turned her back on the pathetic scene of his downfall and looked at the award in her hand. This was her victory. Not his destruction, but her creation. She hadn't torn down his empire out of spite. She had simply built a better one, founded on integrity, passion, and light. The karma that had found Grayson Reinhardt was a consequence of his own actions, a bill that had finally come due. Her future was not about him. It was about the next building, the next project, the next dream. It was a future she would design herself. Aurora Reinhardt's story is a powerful testament to the fact that our greatest creations can be born from our deepest wounds. When faced with public humiliation and betrayal, she didn't crumble. Instead, she channeled her pain into purpose, rediscovering the strength and talent that her cruel husband had tried so desperately to extinguish. She proved that true power isn't about inherited wealth or a famous name. It's about integrity, resilience, and the courage to build a new foundation, even from the ashes of a life burned to the ground. Grayson and Bianca faced the swift and brutal consequences of their actions, a public downfall that mirrored the private pain they had inflicted. Aurora, on the other hand, found her ultimate revenge not in destruction, but in creation, building a legacy that would outshine theirs forever. What did you think of Aurora's journey? Let us know in the comments below. And if you were inspired by her story of strength and vindication, please don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories.